Submarine stands out by far, because you're talking about an animal that weighs tons. It's a small dimension of a small whale, and it's this thing that came back to False Bay each year, and when it left False Bay, nobody knew where it went, and then it would come back, and it would bump boats, and it literally come up and just bump a boat. It had a different behavior. It was the boss, and it knew it was the boss out there, and we hooked it 3 times. My father hooked it 3 times, and I almost lost my life. We almost lost our lives to it. This thing.
How did you almost lose your life?
Well, we were on my dad had a 20-foot boat, a ski boat with 2 outboard engines on, and that boat weighed maybe 800 kilograms, so 1,500, 1,600 pounds, 1,800 pounds.
So the shark outweighed your boat.
Oh, so you're looking at an 800 kilogram boat and a 4,000 to 5,000 kilogram shark. Huge shark. I mean, we've seen big sharks out there, and we've seen 6-meter sharks, and they're like, wow. And I've told you guys, this is enormous. This is a whale. However, you're looking at a shark that's half the size of the submarine, literally. A 6-meter white shark's half the size of that submarine. So you can't understand the dimensions unless you actually saw it. And we were out there the second time my father hooked it, and he hooked it and he had it on the line. It was an 8-meter long cable, or 9-meter long, quite a thick cable with a big hook on it. And the cable led up to a 25-liter, like a 5 or 6 gallon, like a 6-gallon drum, 25-liter drum. And then from there to the rod on the boat. And we hooked the shark, and obviously the shark just went down, and that 25-liter can just disappeared. Gone. And that shark had the can down for an hour, way underwater, didn't know where it was, and we were just fighting it and basically antagonizing this poor shark. And eventually it came up to the surface, and we retrieved line a little bit, and then it disappeared again. And it was on for about another half an hour, and then the roller eye on the front of the fishing rod had seized, and eventually the Dacron wore through, and the line snapped right on the eye. So when it snapped, my father was, oh, for fuck's sakes, he was so angry, because he lost the shark. And then we realized, hang on, but I still got the drum attached to it. And fortunately, that day, False Bay was very calm. So we just circled around in big circles for a long time, maybe another half an hour. And eventually, we saw this little black dot shoot up, way down, 500 meters away or something. We rushed over there, and it was the drum, and it was ominous because it was just this black drum moving across the water, like Jaws, moving across the water. So we had decided that we had actually made a lasso, and the idea was to throw it over the drum and lasso the drum. Then we had the shark again on the rope. We got there, and the shark went down again, gone. And I think on the second or third attempt. But the strange thing is, on that day, I took a recorder with me, a voice recorder, a tape. I had a tape and a tape recorder on the boat. And as soon as that shark took, I started taping the fight. And then there was a gap, because then we started chasing the shark around, and I switched it off. But then when we eventually got the lasso around the drum, and then I had the what do you call it, the mind or whatever, the concentration to actually switch that thing on again, start recording, and the whole thing was on tape. And what happened? We got the drum looped or lassoed, and the shark swam away from the boat, and my father was giving the line out, and eventually was maybe 30 meters on the boat. She was 30 meters on the boat, and he cleated the rope to the side of the boat, and then started fighting the shark with the boat. The engines were in gear, and started pulling the shark, trying to get it to fight itself to death. And next thing, the shark just came at us, because it was sort of on the surface. The drum was still on the surface. The shark was 8-9 meters below, struggling. And next thing, we're watching, and there's no more pressure on the boat, and the drum comes towards the boat, and it's just coming at us. And the shark's coming up, and we were like that, and that submarine came up like that at us, and we just saw this monster coming at the boat. And as it got to the boat, we thought it was going to strike the boat, but she went under. She just went under, and she bumped the boat, and we heard this boom, this thump, and she went under the boat, and then the drum bumped the boat, bang, also against the side of the boat. And now she was going that way, and she came out the other side, and my father thought she was going to continue. Now the rope is under the boat, and if she pulled that straight, we didn't know what would happen. So my father just reacted, and he hit the throttle to try and spin the boat around. But what, unbeknown to us, the submarine came out the other side, and she spun around, and she came back at the boat. So we ran across the cable, and both the outboard engines picked up the cable, and this went, what? Dead like that in the water, and we were just screwed. And suddenly,
with a shark much bigger than you.
oh God, and just bang. And as soon as it happened, we all knew. My best friend Devin was on the boat. He was also 13. And I was 13 at that time. My father and a friend of his called Trevor Grant was on that boat. And that was us. We were screwed in the water. And everything went silent, very quiet. And you could hear on the tape, all of us in quiet on the boat. And then you hear the engines going, when there's trimming the engines up, he wants to see what's going on. And it's just a mangle of metal and wire around those propellers. So, you know, he was still trying to figure out how to do this. And then the shark just went mad. And all he hears like, wow, this smashing, this grinding. And you hear us on the tape recorder, oh my God. And Devin's like, we're going to die, you know. And
what's it doing? What's the shark
just
doing?
smashing into the back of the boat. Smashing the outboard engines and biting and attacking the boat.
Wow.
The shark is protecting itself. It's now recognized the boat as its attacker, and the shark is fighting to the death on the back of that boat. It was nailing that boat, smashing it to pieces. And you hear all this commotion, and Devin, he runs into the cabin. He dives into the little cabin in the front, and then what the shark did at that point, she'd smash the boat, and then she was exhausted. And then she'd settle back in the water, and she'd try and swim away, and she'd struggle, and she'd swim this way, and it was like 2 meters of cable, and the cable would pull her head back, toof, and then she'd try and swim this way, and toof. It was horrible. So at one point she swam and she kept swimming, and what she did, she actually pulled the boat up against the side of it. So now her head was like 2 meters past the boat, her tail was at the front of the boat, and now the boat's against the body, so she starts rolling, and her tail comes up and smashes down on the cabin. Wow! Devin comes shooting out the cabin, and you hear it on tape. And he's crying, and he's screaming, we're going to die, let's get out of here, I want to die, we're going to die. And he says to me, Craig, I wet myself. And he peed himself completely. That's how scared he was. I was scared, you know. So eventually, my dad gets on the horn, and he puts on a mayday, and the shark's just ripping the boat to pieces, and he's mayday, mayday. And fortunately, it was during the week. So there weren't many boats up. And there was a boat a mile or two away from us, and they had their radio on, thank God. And they came over. They were there 10 minutes later or 5 minutes later, and they were speechless. You know, they saw this shark smashing this boat up. So they threw us a rope and they started towing us back towards the harbour. So it was them, our boat, and the submarine. And then we all calmed down, you know, and my throat was dry, and we wear the cool drinks, and on the recording, you hear me shouting to the other boat, it's bigger than the boat, it's bigger than the boat. And they towed us for, I don't know, maybe a mile, slowly. And then the submarine started rolling again, and pulling, and boom, it was gone. And that hook, I kid you not, it's a hook like that, as thick, if not thicker than that finger. You can imagine the damage that's just straight jaw. Well, not completely, but, you know, like that, enough to pull out.
They think it messed up the jaw of
I must have heard it. We saw her again. We saw her about a month later. And we lost her, and she took off. And that would have been the end of a legend. But that was very close. And we got back to shore, and we had that tape recording. And I don't know, we played it to somebody. We kept playing it to people. We never made a copy of it. We're idiots. And then some film guy heard about it, and he contacted my father, and he came to the house, and my dad played it to him, and it was mesmerizing. You sat there for an hour, whatever it was, and just listened to this tape, and you couldn't take, you know, it was worse than watching a movie. It was all there. And he said to my dad, no, he's got to make a movie of this, got to make a movie about this. So he wanted to get, you know, obviously get the whole thing on. So he said, can I borrow this tape? I mean, never saw it, no movie, I mean, never saw that tape again. And that tape was part of history now, because the submarine is part of white shark law and history in this country. So, of course, submarine is the one that comes to mind, my favorite shark. And I just hope that, you know, it had a dignified death. It didn't get, you know, caught by a big shark net or trawler and we never knew about it, you know.